Hi, Pastor Nathan Egger with your hashtag Better Together devotion for today. And yesterday I talked about submitting to Christ. Today I want to talk about being dependent upon each other and to being dependent upon God. Our concept of liberty and freedom is often one that we see through a political lens. That is, that we celebrate, like on the 4th of July, we're declaring our independence from England and Britain and all that kind of stuff. And sometimes we even have moments in our own world where we do civil disobedience to declare independence from systems of abuse and oppression. But in the scriptures, when we talk about freedom and liberty, we have to understand it from a new way. So, for example, Paul writes to the Galatians in chapter 5, verse 13, "For you were called to freedom, brothers and sisters. Not only do not use that freedom as an opportunity for self-indulgence, but through love become slaves to one another. Become servants to one another. Become those that look out for each other." You see, we're called not just to submit to Christ and say that Jesus is Lord, but we're also called to be dependent upon one another. Now, I know this is really foreign to us as Americans, because as Americans, we don't submit to anyone, and we want to pull ourselves up by our own bootstraps, and we want to be independent. Well, that's not what Christ calls us to do. In fact, we have to be countercultural here. We have to be totally different than the world that we are in. As people of faith, we're called to be dependent upon each other, to serve one another. And in doing so, we find true freedom in obedience to Christ. Now that sounds so oxymoronic, right? That to find freedom, we have to be slaves and servants to one another. To find true liberty, we have to allow ourselves to become dependent upon each other. You see, Christ envisioned us, and so did the early church. He envisioned us as a world where we would literally be looking out for each other. We would care for one another, that we'd look for opportunities to lift up each other. Not use our freedom and our liberty and our power as a way of independence and self-indulgence, but instead to use the freedom that God gave us, to use this wonderful gift of grace and love that Christ has empowered us with, and use it to empower others, to serve others, to love others, to create a community where we are all interlinked and dependent on each other, so that we become better together. In your prayer life today, I want to invite you to ask yourself, what are ways that you can go and look for sisters and brothers and siblings in the faith and ask them to help you grow in being dependent on Christ and dependent on each other as a people of faith. Take time. Find people that you know are on the way, on the journey with Christ, and seriously ask them to enter into a deeper relationship with you so that you can become dependent upon Christ and one another. Amen.